Well, as you know, with one video a month, we are revisiting the 10-year anniversary of building the 20 mule team Borax wagons. We did this in 2016. Well, this particular video is showing how we built the wheels for these wagons. I actually posted it on April 13th of 2017, well after we were done with the Rose Parade, but I had run out of time to keep on posting in order to keep our schedule for that Rose Parade. So we already had the hubs turned, and we visited that in a previous video, but we were letting these hubs sit for just as long as possible, trying to make sure they were as dry as possible. So about August, September, we began building the wheels, and at the end of this video we show how the tires were set, and we did that in early October. We were trying to work it in around winter that was beginning to set in here at Montana. So this is another video that was initially shot in 720 that we have brought up into 1080 quality. These are the wagons that we're going to show in this video how we built the wheels for. The front wheels are 58, the back wheels are 80 inches and weigh 1,080 pounds. The next step is to build the bands that go on these hubs. In order to get these to run through the roller, we're going to start the curve on the end of this straight stock, get it to match the curve of the hub, and then it will fit into the 3-roll roller and begin to roll these irons to where they can be used as hub bands. These are the bands that will go up against the spoke, and they are 1/2 inch thick by 2 inches wide, as compared to a regular wagon hub band, which would be 1/4 inch thick and 1 inch wide. Similar to the hub bands, we also need to roll the tires. These are 1 inch thick, 8 inches wide. The roller that we rolled the hub bands on was not heavy enough to do these tires, so we had these rolled for us in Billings. Once the hub bands are rolled and sized, we treat them in hot oil to give them this black look, and then heat them up again to shrink them onto the hubs themselves. As these bands are cooling, the heat from the bands will actually push the oil from the treated hubs deeper into the wood. And of course we're doing all 8 hubs at once. Now that they have been bored and banded, we can go ahead and push in the boxings. This is the boxing that will actually run on the axle spindle when they're on the wagon itself. Here you can see the small end of the boxings that comes out where the nut will ride. Now we're going to begin making the spokes. Bobby Tanner brought up some 4-inch red oak from California that had been drying for a number of years, and we sorted through this to find the sufficient amount to make the spokes out of. We sorted these for front and rear spokes, and then began the process of cutting them to size. These are going to be 4 3/4 inch wide where they go into the hub, tapered down to 4 1/4 to the fellies. These planks were 3 1/2 inch thick, so we resawed these down to 2 inch thick. This is the thickness of the spokes that are required on these wheels. After these are planed to thickness, we're going to cut the tenons on the end of the spokes that go into the hub. These have a tapered tenon, so we built a jig on our sander to put the taper on the end of these spokes that will fit the tapered mortise that is in the hubs. Then all the sharp corners of these spokes need to be rounded off. Now with our spokes completed, the next thing we need to do is to begin to make our felly sections. We've made patterns for the front and rear wheels, and it's a process of taking these patterns, putting them on 4-inch red oak, and making enough felly sections that we can glue 2 together to come up with an 8-inch wide felly for these 8-inch wide wheels. This whole process involves cutting out 136 felly sections for these 2 wagons. Now with our felly sections sawn out, we can actually begin to assemble the wheels. And this is 1 spoke at a time, every other spoke, and then filling in the spaces, and making sure with the square that we have the proper dish. We want a 1-degree taper of these spokes coming out of the hub, and Calvin checks every spoke. Then we need to measure our overall length, so we end up with the proper diameter of wheel. And then we have a jig that's going to show us where the tenon needs to be placed on the end of the spoke. This shows us where the tenon will be. And because of the width of these spokes, the excess, before we start to cut the tenon, is taken off by hand. Once all the excess is removed, we can actually begin cutting the tenons on these spokes. The first process is using a spoke cone that will put a point, like a pencil sharpener, on the end of each spoke. These pointed spokes will now fit inside the tenon cutter that we have made to cut the tenons for these spokes. These tenons are 1 3/4 inch thick. After the tenons are cut, we also built a sander that's going to come down and put the finishing edge on the shoulder of the spoke so that we have a tight fit from the spoke to the felly. Calvin has built both the tenon auger and the finishing sander for these wheels. With our tenons cut, the next thing we need to do is start to assemble the fellies. You can see here we have the two 4-inch felly sections glued together. There's a bolt on each side of each tenon, so there's 4 bolts in each felly section, and it's just a matter of assembling the fellies onto the wheels. The front wheels on these wagons have 16 spokes and the rear wheels have 18. Once the fellies are assembled onto the wheels, we put them past the sander to make sure that everything runs true and that the face of the fellies is square for the tire. So this is what we look like when we're finished. We're ready to size them for the iron. These wheels continue to gain weight, so it takes now the 2 of us to get them on and off the stands. Before we set the tires, we put them in the paint room and give them a good coating of linseed oil to protect them. Then there's the time necessary to prepare the iron as tires to go on these wheels. These 1-inch thick, 8-inch wide tires are weighing in around 600 pounds. We built a big bonfire out back of the shop, and we put 2 tires in at a time, one front and one rear. Right in front there is my son Nate. To the back left is Jim Bluer. Calvin is going to run the forklift. We also have Mike Kirsch on hand to help, and Mark Smith. My brother-in-law Rick Bischoff is running the camera. We built some tire dogs to lift these tires out of the fire. Like I said, they're about 600 pounds. So we use 10-foot lengths of rod to position these dogs over the tires so that we could stay back away from the heat of this fire. It was a big fire. Remember, these tires are 1-inch thick, 8-inch wide. And so it took a fair fire to do that. So you can see now the dogs are down over the tire, and Calvin is going to take that tire right up out of there and bring it over to the wheel. This particular tire has a lot of heat to it. If you noticed it, it had a little red glow to it. Nate is stabilizing the tire. This is one of the original tire tools that were used out of the Alf Blacksmith Shop in Daggett, California. They were gracious enough to send them up. You can see how these 3 tire dogs have picked up, how they work. And you just set this right over the wheel. These tires were nice and round, they fit on really well. There is a lot of heat in this tire, so we have 2 garden hoses going continually to take the heat out of these wheels. Because of the size of the iron, it took a fair bit of time to cool them down. And then we replaced the next wheel into the fire, getting ready for the next back wheel. The other front wheel is in there waiting for the next wheel for the front wheel. So we just keep alternating back and forth between all of these wheels. We ended up doing all 8 wheels. We did them in 5 hours a time. We had a good crew, everything went really well. So as the tires begin to come down and make contact, we're going to do some final adjusting, because once these are tight, they don't move. Once the tire is somewhat cool, it's not cold, but it's somewhat cool, Calvin's going to come in and we're going to lift this off of our stand and get ready for the next wheel. This is the back wheel here. This one, when we got done, we weighed, they were weighing in at 1,080 pounds. You notice when we picked this up, I had this strap a little too close to the hub. This was part of the learning process in what was going to happen, but you'll notice this strap began to slide up the spokes toward the felly. It didn't end up being a problem, but as we watched that happen, the next ones we grabbed a little closer to the felly and we didn't have this problem again. So here the forklift just picks it up off of the stand, is going to set it back down. We usually had about 3 guys on these wheels as we roll them around. So this one we're getting ready to roll back into the shop. This is the first one that we did. So this was kind of the learning curve. We had kind of anticipated what was going to happen and everything went just really well. Here Jem is bringing a front wheel out. You see the number 8 on it. Each of these wheels we have numbered so that they coordinate with the tire. Each tire is sized specifically to each wheel. So this helps keep each wheel and each tire straight. So here we're going to lay the wheel down on the stand and get ready for its tiring. So the front tire has still been in the fire. It's starting to burn down. You can see the coals are getting a little less, but there's still a lot of heat there. So we'll adjust these dogs over the iron. Calvin will pick it right up out of the fire and we'll put it on the front wheel. We're going to reload up the next front tire, and the next few shots are just different shots of doing the 8 wheels that we did this morning. So with any type of wagon or buggy work, wheels is always the most intimidating process to most everyone, and that's why I fixed so many wheels. These wagons were no different. When you're looking at 800 to 1,000 pounds wheels, there's no way around. They're intimidating, but the process is the same. Next is to take these wheels and get them onto the wagons themselves, which is another challenge. We do appreciate you coming along, and I just want to remind you that we do have some anniversary jackets left. If you are interested, you can give me an email at david@engelscoachshop.com, and Diane will get them sent your way. Appreciate you coming along. Thanks for watching.